So once again, we're here. We talked about the philosophical starting point of this study, uh, and then we talked about the different skills you gave them in lectures and practice, and that the point was not to provide them with fixed solutions, but to make them find out and becoming aware of possible solutions so that they can build upon their expertise in their careers. Maybe it's a good time now to go to the results. What did you find?
Yeah. So in sum, to summarize it, the training was very well received, both from the instructors and from the snipers themselves. And of course, without going too much into details about that, but with regards to the integrity, trustworthiness, and rigor of the study, it's of course important to, for me, reflect about, okay, what's my influence on these sniper candidates? And as an experienced dude coming into this, of course, just being there and focusing on them will be experienced as a positive contribution. So that's why it was important for us in this particular study also to have instructor observations and statistical data in addition to the snipers' experiences. And what we saw, interestingly, but not surprisingly, from the statistical data is that the shooting performance does not vary much from previous courses. And as I explained earlier, it's because the instructors are really good at what they're doing, because they are educating snipers. So if we would think that, okay, we will get quantitative data on the results and seeing that all the tests are much better, then it wouldn't be a good testament to the education they have developed over years and from combat experience. But the interesting thing is that on the quantitative data that's not shooting, especially on stalking, orienteering, and other things that demand a more cognitive approach, we see that the results are significantly better on this course, and for the first time everybody passed. And of course you can't say that the causality is because we implemented mental skills and we shouldn't, but at least it's an indication that something happened. And then when you look at what the instructors were describing and what the snipers were describing, we can see that the way the philosophical overview, the way it was taught, the selection of the methods, it worked really well as a whole. And the interesting thing was that through focusing on making them expertise equipped, not competence equipped, we saw that, okay, they experienced that they were to a larger degree able to perform as they wanted to. So that was just from the results. And because they're all individual humans, they also explain it in different ways. So for those who are interested, it's not that difficult to read the results section in the paper, and there's a lot of good examples there on how differently the guys were using the mental skills. And I think that's super important, because it's you can't you can't present solutions. You have to present options, and then you have to accept that and be pragmatic about it. So it evolves, and they use their own words towards it. Interestingly, we wanted to do a follow-up a long time afterwards to see, okay, what did they think now? And the same experience are reflected in the follow-up and the member reflections. So that again kind of underlines that integrating mental skills is not necessarily the most stupid thing you can do for performance.
What do you mean by integrating, by the way? I didn't ask you that.
Yeah, integrating is being present, because I was there the whole time during the course,
Mhm.
and I made myself available on not just my short sessions, which are described in the paper, but also when they're on the range. So they had the ability to chat with me about their own the way they performed. And instead of when they asked me, what should I do? I always reframed it to okay, so you're here, what do you want to do? So I was coaching them during
Yeah,
the course as well to enhance the effect of the mental skills.
yeah,
So it's super important to be present. You can't expect to give a lecture and then fuck off, sorry my French, and then expect them to adapt it. You have to be present.
yeah,
And that's the point of being embedded instead
yeah,
of just coming in and doing some stuff. But
yeah,
you have to share the experience with them.
yeah.
And for me, the way I work, that's super important.
And can we generalize it? Can we come up with some ideas how, for example, how can we do that in policing, for example, or maybe in emergency medicine? What does it mean? Does it mean that because the training is of course not 7 weeks long, so there is, do you have any suggestions about how other occupations?
Yeah, and building from the experience from my supervisors, especially from Dave Collins, I would say that to use his words, he says that you have to work through the trainers. I think the best you can do is educating the trainers and instructors in a way that they can every day, every time teach parts of this stuff.
Mhm.
And then it has to be applicable and simple to do. It
Yeah,
can't steal time, because as you know, there's always this time and resources issue. So you don't need a performance psychologist in training or a performance coach or a psychologist present all the time. But if I were in a position to give an advice, I would say that the most important thing is to educate your trainers.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the
So,
train is, and how important it is. Well, the broader question is the acceptance of the training.
yeah,
So what I learned in police was that I was, for example, I was not from SWAT, but when I became a firearms instructor and did training with SWAT, it was the, I was a little bit older, so I was quite easy with it. But you're not part of the group. You're not part
yeah,
of the boys. And I also heard from colleagues in the aviation, the Air Force program, that, for example, for psychologists, is also very difficult if they go to a squadron. Yeah, because you are not one of the guys. So
yeah,
how
yeah.
important? Yeah,
I think that's a important question, and of course, in this particular paper, I was lucky because I
yeah,
have more experience than all of them.
yeah,
So that makes it easy to be a part of the group. But I worked in other contexts as well where there I don't have that same experience or that type of selection and training. But everything is then again, it's one thing is it's up to you as an instructor, and the other thing, if they are not willing to receive this type of training, it's nothing you can do.
yeah,
If they don't experience the need to become better, if they don't want to increase performance, what can you do? You can't force them.
yeah.
And this is a part of both the problem and solution, I think, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. So if I learn something from this paper, it is that if you implement, of course, it differs. For example, if I'm teaching recruits in a police academy, so they are 17, 18 years old sometimes, or youngsters, and everything is It's another thing than if you go to a sniper course, of course, I think, eh?
Yeah.
But it
But
should be, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can use the same stuff, but with a bit of a different approach. For instance, for the younger guys, and the way I teach our junior cadets in the military academy, I start with offline stuff.
Yeah.
So, and we know that learning some type of meditation it's super valuable for you. We know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So instead of going into like the now you're going to become sniper stuff, I would rather use some offline techniques to help them on their journey. Again, presenting options instead of solutions, and helping them. Okay, what's the easiest thing I can start with? Okay, it's helping them with their stressful day. So, okay, where do we start? You need to sleep. Don't drink too much alcohol. Be careful what you put in your mouth, and do regular physical exercise.
Yeah.
So you have to start there, and when that's settled and they do that, you can, in addition, integrate some form of meditation protocol to help them experience more calmness on their exams, because as officers they will need the ability for to have access to the prefrontal cortex and be cognitive when they're doing their decision making.
Yeah.
But you don't have to start right away talking about it's super important that you're able to be cognitive in your decision making process. But you can start it. I'm super stressed with these exams. I have 100 books I have to read. Okay. So, and then you introduce mental skills or performance psychology in a way that actually makes a difference for them on what they're doing.
Yeah.
And again, with regards to what you were saying, it's again, if you're with a SWAT team that trains hundreds and hundreds of hours on shooting, there's nothing you can learn them. No. So they are already doing that stuff really, really well. But then you have to do a case conceptualization, which means that you have to do a needs analysis on the performer, the environment, and on the task. And then you have to do an issue conceptualization where you reflect on the data you gathered and you look at how can I help them perform in what they want me to assist them in achieving.
Yeah.
And then lastly, it's the case formulation, which means really, okay, this is the way I'm thinking about it. These are the proposed interventions. And I think if you jump that step, it will never be optimal. Your interventions will lack a lot of detail.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of problems can be that they expect mental skills or performance psychology to be some kind of magic powder that you can come in and just blah blah blah, and then everything sorts itself out. But you have to integrate it, and you have to train it, and you have to be consistent about it to have any influence on performance. And it all starts with, do they want to do it or no? So don't try to breach closed doors when it comes to this type of training. It has to be a need.
And to summarize a little bit, so for colleagues struggling with the acceptance part, that it is not accepted right away, I think you can use trainers instead of doing it all yourself. Trainers from the group self, so they are already have the experience.
I would always start with that, because as a trainer, you're always interested in expanding your knowledge. I think I never met anyone who is a trainer or instructor who aren't interested in making their people as good as they can be, and helping them with some parts of a performance psychology curriculum can have great effects. And I think for most units, that's the best way of going about it.
Yeah.
training your trainers.
Training your trainers, and you also talk, but it becomes too much for this session, but you also talk about the personal performance plan.
Yeah.
Which also seems like a great concept, but I think every trainer should read the article anyway.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And the other one also, and Dave Collins I also followed for a long time. I think he was the one who wrote the article, The Rocky Road to, I think
that's right,
two-part series, I remember.
Yeah.
But another important topic we didn't talk about, but the performance versus mental health, because sometimes we hear about mental skill training, and a lot of times it is more about prevention of PTSD or moral injury nowadays, and which is of course very important, but there is a difference, isn't it?
I believe strongly there is a difference, and as we cover some of that in our paper, Sharpening the Tip of the Spear, that perhaps the most overlooked prevention for PTSD is actually performance. And being confident in a situation and being able to have access to the resources you have, and knowing that you're able to make the best possible decision is a very important factor. And of course, all type of preparation, when it's done in the right way, could perhaps make work like a vaccine in some way against some types of emotional reactions in the situation, but it can never prevent PTSD or moral injury, and we have to take that seriously. And it's not about being mental tough, resilient, being hardiness, or having grit or growth mindset and all these constructs. None of them will prevent having experienced moral injury, for instance. So, but we have to work like before preparation, training, the focus, and that should be on performance enhancement, not necessarily preventing PTSD, because you have to put it where it belongs, and then it's during the situation, and then of course it's after. So having performance psychology and clinical psychology, they're not opposites. It's like this, but you have to like talk about the same subjects in a timeline or in a way that makes sense to people, I think. And I don't have a solution for this, or in any way, shape, or form, or any expert on that subject, but these are just my personal thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, great. Yes. So also there we can work to integrate it better into the total preparation, the total performance cycle, eh?
Yeah, I think so. And this paper is a part of my PhD.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff I can't discuss now because I haven't defended my PhD yet, but parts of it is setting these things now we talk about into a system. So where do we start? Why do we start with it? Where do we go? What can we do with the people who start out in a profession like this? And what is the difference between our combat Olympians and the people starting basic training? You can't use the same type of stuff, but they need some of the same type of skills, but on a different level. So what we saw as a sum of the paper, what the most important finding for us, I think, was that we saw the increase in metacognition. So the ability to think about your thinking, and that is a direct causality, I think, to going for not just competence equipped, but expertise equipped, as Cruikshank talks about this in his paper. And I'm super happy with that because it enables them to learn through their professional career. So we've been able to mental skills have an influence on how we use your cognition and your metacognition. And as a performer in stressful situation, when you're able to, in some way, shape, or form, influence your experience, it decreases the stress experience according to the cognitive activation theory of stress from Ursine, which I write about. So we have like, you have the acute stress and you have the longer, the other type of stress, the allostatic load, for instance. And all of these things are interconnected, and it's not, we need to be able to talk about it in a way that's accessible to the guy or girl on the ground. We have to make it interesting enough, simple enough, and applicable enough.
And
so they actually want to use it.
And let's try by ourselves right now, because you mentioned two things. Of course, the scientists listening know what we're talking about, but for trainers, we talk about metacognition, and then we talk about you talked about the CAT.
The CATS model.
Yeah,
Cognitive activation theory. Yeah.
Can you for the boys and girls who are training, can you, those two concepts, metacognition and the stress theory, can you say it in simple?
Again, training the trainers, this would be something that's super important to cover. It's our understanding of stress and how stress influences us. And there are hundreds of variations of presenting this. And what I've found through my research is that the cognitive activation theory of stress, it has a strong research base, and it's aligned with my own philosophy. It means that you're in a situation and you experience something, and if you and I, Erica, are together, you will experience it in one way, I will experience in another. So let's say I will be super stressed. You've been in this situation, you feel better prepared, you don't get any activation, but I get an activation because I think this is difficult, and then an alarm goes off, and then the whole shebang with the stress activation happens, and your cognitive capacity starts to shrink in really, really quickly. But for you, it doesn't, because you don't have the same activation. And then, with regards to performance psychology and mental skills, it means that you can, in many ways, prepare for this situation by understanding what's going on in your brain and body through the CATS activation theory. So that's the one thing. And then you have a whole nother thing which you can use probably several hours on talking about, is the allostatic model of stress. So not to geek in too much, but in the early 50s, Hans Seyle came up with the homeostasis model, which is you have an incident, something happens, you're activated, and then your brain-body system goes down again to homeostasis. But emerging research on stress, and I really like the allostatic model. It explains human as living in both the past, here and now, and in the future. And it understands stress in a more holistic way. And what we see based on that theory is that if you're in an environment where there's a lot of stress, your set point of stress will increase. And the more stress you experience, the higher the set point becomes. And this influences the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And really short, it's about being able to put on the brakes, which is the parasympathetic, and using the gas, the sympathetic, in a way that is aligned with what you do. So having these theories that are quite developed, you can explain not necessarily 100% like causality, but you can explain, if you do this, this will probably decrease your set point, which means that you won't have to go to, you get to a burnout stage, which is a disease in modern society.
Yeah.
But you can be able to do stuff that decreases this set point, and you have to be super aware of it, because previous experiences, previous traumatic experience will naturally alter your set point onto a higher level, meaning that your nervous system will be more activated towards the gas or the throttle than on the brake. So being able to balance in brake, throttle is super important for people who are in these kinds of jobs over a long period of time.
And so is what you're saying that there comes the metacognition comes in, that students and professionals learn about these processes?
Yeah.
And so if you learn about them and you understand them, you can also, I think, influence them for a little bit or more.
And we know so much now about what's healthy for us and not, and being able to take care of yourself is the most important thing we can do. And also in periods of that's high on stress, you should be careful, or not careful, but you should use your metacognition, your metacognitive abilities to check out, if do I really need to get up 4:30 in the morning and do 100 burpees because that someone says that that's the way to get mental tough, or should you sleep in and have a good breakfast and spend time with your family? So like, it's really not that difficult, but you have to be aware of it. What are your strategies when you are stressed? Do you go for a super hard workout, or do you just decrease your training intensity? Do you focus on your sleep? Do you focus on your nutrition? We know how bad alcohol, even in small amounts, are with regards to stress. So what are your strategies for handling stress? Maybe not 3 whiskeys in the evening before you go to bed is the optimum solution. So being aware of that can severely influence the way you handle stress, and that is a personal responsibility in being in really difficult jobs, because I don't think the system always will the demand is there to perform on your job, and not to become like, but having a holistic view of health is super important, I think. And performance psychology is not about just high performance. It's about what can I do to perform over a long period of time.
That's nice.
That's my take on this.
Great.
So,
so we have 10 minutes left. It would be nice if we could summarize. I think we summarized the study. Maybe we can summarize what you learned from it. And maybe have some I'm putting you on the spotlight right now, but but maybe have some advice for many organizations I know, for example, in the Netherlands, both in the police, emergency medicine, and military. We have a lot of good stuff, but how to wisely implement it. So
that's a big ask. And let's start with the first one. What I learned is that you really have to focus on the context and the people that you're training. So the case conceptualization is so important, understanding that that's kind of the first step. Do not jump the hurdle. Spend time analyzing and reflecting, and what you don't know, talk to someone who can help you with it, and expand your knowledge. Be a learner. And that kind of is what I take out with this as well, is this is just a paper that although it goes over a significant time period, if I were to do it again, I would of course do something different because I've learned from it. So it's not the end all be all. It's just one example of a place and time that we did something that worked really well. But don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to test things. And as a trainer, I think you need to focus on what's your philosophical approach to teaching people, and spending time understanding all the things that is behind the things you are saying, because that will enable you to be more precise in the way you are teaching this stuff. And I think also being pragmatic about it. If something doesn't work, adapt, adjust, and do something else. It's not, doesn't have to be these solutions. It has to be options. So with regards to the second question, I think I tried to answer it in the first with what I learned. So the main thing for me is being able to be curious, just continue on my experiential learning journey, and being curious, being humble, listening to people, but also be critical of what you are presented these days, because it's not all research are great research, and not all research maybe fits the context and situation you are in. So being able to evolve critical thinking and read the research, but understand where it's coming from and what it is about. Don't try to sell it just because this paper people like it. Don't take everything from that paper and adapt it into your context, but be critical about it. Yeah, I think that kind of sums up.
Well, thank you so much for all this great information.
Thank you for having me. It was a great
approach. Yes. I had to sit on my hands because there are so many pearls of concepts and so on in this beautiful paper, and I think also my colleagues like it a lot, and the other paper also. I wish you good luck with your PhD in November, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So then you have to perform under pressure yourself.
I have to perform under pressure, yes, for sure. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's
you have a lot of options, now.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of options.
A lot of options.
So, yeah.
So thank you so much. And I will stop the recording. We can have a little talk afterwards. So here.
Thank you.